Supreme Court kind of making some big announcements. This is kind of the time of the year where they drop all of their hearings, or they drop all of their cases on the American public, and then they head for the hills. Don't answer any questions because I don't know, why would you want to? But Supreme Court ruling on a bunch of different things. Natalie, one of those is the reverse discrimination thing. There was a case where a woman said, hey, I had to reach a higher standard because I didn't fit any sort of minority status. I wasn't gay. I wasn't an immigrant or whatever other DEI things. And the Supreme Court said, no, you can't hold people who don't categorize themselves in any sort of diverse way in a higher standard than you do with other people. They also were, interestingly enough, unanimous on saying that Mexico as a country couldn't sue U.S. manufacturers. They also said, yeah, Catholic have free speech in that case in Wisconsin. We don't have to go through the litany of this. But Natalie, it kind of seems like the Supreme Court, because some of the cases have been so outlandish, to use that term again, it seems like the Supreme Court, even some of the lib justices are going, yeah, some of this is crazy, and we're going to vote unanimously on some of this stuff. I guess, I don't know. Do you think the Supreme Court ultimately will retain its position as the most respected branch of the U.S. government?
I don't know. It's tough to say, but these were definitely some wins for American values and for conservatives, and I'm happy with them. I'm not happy with everything the Supreme Court does, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's shocking but not surprising that if you're a member of a majority group, up until now, you had to have a further burden of proof that you were discriminated against, because it used to be, they said that it was unusual for an employer to discriminate against a member of a majority group, but it seems to me like that would be pretty usual given the fact that we have these DEI programs and affirmative action. I think a lot of people probably were more likely to discriminate against men and against white people and against straight people. So it's nice that has maybe been, we're moving away from that, and we all have the same equal burden of proof when it comes to proving discrimination. And then Mexico tried to sue us for 10 billion, or sue US gun manufacturers for $10 billion in damages, which I think is pretty crazy, because I would like to sue Mexico for all the people and the drugs that they send over the border. So I'm glad that the Supreme Court unanimously saw that was a silly lawsuit, and maybe Mexico should get their cartel members under control instead of blaming the guns. I don't really understand that at all.
Yeah, it was crazy that they tried. But I am glad the Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that. And every single one of them agreed. Speaking of Mexico, Matt, there is a new warning coming out from U.S. officials saying there's a security threat to Americans who vacation in Mexico and may use dating apps. You got to be cautious of kidnapping. In order to separate ourselves from a culture that this is a huge problem with tourists going to places and using various apps and being susceptible to kidnapping, I don't know, maybe we should build a wall between us and that country. Maybe a crazy idea. Your thoughts on the warning coming out from the U.S. government?
Well, as if the results weren't good enough already with online dating and dating apps in this country, we're going down to Mexico to try it, which is kind of like being in this country and saying, the water isn't that great. Let's go to Somalia and try their water. And I don't even think the daughter in Taken was that stupid to use a dating app in Mexico. I mean, I'll put it to both of you. If you went down there and got captured by use of a dating app, would you bother calling the embassy? I'd be too embarrassed.
Yeah, in other words, maybe just don't do that. It's good that the United States has a warning, but also you exercise some, I don't know, logic there. Don't go on dating apps in foreign countries, lest you be kidnapped, which would be a terrible thing. Nobody wants to see that happen.